The sun was sinking low over the endless dunes, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Heat still clung to the sand, rising in shimmering waves, but the air was beginning to cool. Adrian walked ahead, his steps slow and heavy, his eyes scanning the horizon for anything that could mean shelter or water. Ilara followed close behind, her lips dry, her hair tangled from the desert wind. Neither spoke. The silence between them was not of discomfort, but of exhaustion and something deeper. A quiet understanding that words could not carry them through this place. A low, distant sound broke the stillness. At first it was so faint Adrian thought it was the wind shifting through the dunes. But it came again, a deep, resonant growl that seemed to vibrate in his bones. Ilara stopped in her tracks, her gaze sweeping the landscape. The noise grew louder, steady, purposeful. Then, from the crest of a distant dune, it appeared. A lion. Its mane caught the dying light, glowing like strands of molten gold. Every step it took was deliberate, powerful, the sand giving way beneath its massive paws. Adrian's first instinct was to step in front of Ilara, his arm raised slightly as though he could shield her from a creature so clearly built for power and dominance. His heart raced, yet he felt no urge to run. The lion's amber eyes locked on them, not with hunger, but with a strange, knowing intensity. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. The fear she expected never came. Instead, she felt as though something ancient had found her, something that could see past skin and bone, straight into the core of who she was. The lion approached until it was close enough for her to hear the steady rhythm of its breathing. It lowered its head slightly, its gaze flicking between her and Adrian as if weighing their worth. Neither of them moved. Time seemed to slow, the fading sunlight stretching the shadows around them. The air felt heavy, charged with an unspoken meaning they could not name. Finally, the lion stepped past them, its tail brushing the sand softly, and then paused a short distance ahead. It turned back, its eyes meeting Ilara's once more. Not a threat, but an invitation. Without a word, Adrian and Ilara followed. As the sky deepened into indigo and stars began to pierce the horizon, the lion led them to a hidden oasis, the water glistening like liquid glass under the first touch of moonlight. They stood at the edge, staring at the miracle before them. But Adrian's eyes were drawn to Ilara, her face luminous in the pale glow. The lion settled nearby, silent and watchful, as though it had always been meant to guide them here. That night under the desert stars, the bond between the three of them began, not with declarations or promises, but in the quiet certainty that fate had brought them together for a reason neither could yet understand. The night had settled over the desert like a velvet curtain, the heat of the day giving way to a cool, gentle breeze that carried the faint scent of water and wild herbs from the oasis. The stars above were sharp and endless, scattered across the heavens like pieces of shattered crystal. The moon, bright and full, bathed everything in a silver light that softened the edges of the world. The water reflected it perfectly, as though the sky had spilled itself into the earth. Adrian sat on the smooth sand, his boots set aside, his bare feet sinking into the cool grains. The silence was deep but not empty. It hummed with life, with the gentle lapping of water and the occasional rustle of palm leaves swaying in the wind. Across from him, Ilara knelt at the water's edge, her fingers trailing through its mirrored surface. Ripples bloomed outward from her touch, catching the moonlight and sending it dancing. He watched her quietly, his eyes tracing the curve of her hair as it fell over her shoulder, the way her lashes cast delicate shadows on her cheeks. The desert had stripped them of comfort, of safety, of the distractions of the world, leaving only raw truth between them. She turned her head slightly, catching him in the act of looking, and for a moment neither of them looked away. "Are you cold?" he asked, his voice low, almost cautious, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell of the night. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "No, not with you here." The words were simple, but they landed deep. He rose, closing the space between them. The air between them seemed to thicken, heavy with something neither had dared name until now. He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Her breath caught, not from surprise, but from the way his touch lingered, gentle yet certain, as if he had been waiting for this moment longer than he realized. They sat side by side at the water's edge, their shoulders brushing, each touch like a quiet question that needed no answer. The lion lay a short distance away, its golden eyes half-lidded but still watchful, like a guardian of something sacred. The world beyond this oasis, the sand, the dangers. The exhaustion felt impossibly far away. Ilara leaned slightly toward him, their arms pressing together, her gaze dropping for a heartbeat before lifting back to his. In that shared glance, they understood that no words were necessary. The bond forming between them was not born of chance, but of something deeper, something written into the fabric of the desert night. Under the gaze of the moon and the silent lion, they stayed close, their hands finding each other without thought, their fingers weaving together. It was not yet a kiss, but the air between them burned with the promise of one. The stars turned slowly overhead, marking the hours they did not notice, as they remained bound in the quiet gravity of each other's presence. The first blush of dawn crept across the horizon, staining the desert sky in pale gold and rose. The air was still cool, the sand beneath them carrying the last traces of the night's chill. Adrian stirred first, his senses sharpening at a low, rumbling growl. The lion stood a few paces away, its muscles coiled, eyes locked on the distance. It wasn't the sound of the wind that had woken them. It was danger. "Ilara," he whispered urgently, his hand shaking her shoulder. Her eyes fluttered open, still heavy with sleep. But the moment she saw the lion's stance, she knew something was wrong. Then she heard it, the faint but unmistakable thundering of hooves. Shadows emerged on the far ridge, growing larger with every heartbeat. Armed riders, their faces wrapped in cloth, their weapons glinting in the early light, were bearing down on them. Adrian's hand found hers instinctively. "We have to move." They grabbed what little they had and ran, the lion loping beside them, its deep growls swelling into roars that echoed across the dunes. The sound of the hooves grew louder, sharper, until it was all around them. Sand kicked up in clouds as arrows sliced through the air, one passing so close to Adrian's arm that it tore through his sleeve and grazed his skin. He stumbled, but Ilara's grip tightened, pulling him forward. "Don't stop," she said, her voice shaking yet fierce. "Not now." The lion surged ahead, cutting across their path to block the riders. Its roar was like rolling thunder, so fierce it made the air vibrate. The horses reared, their riders pulling back in hesitation. Adrian seized the moment, leading Ilara toward a jagged outcrop of rocks. They ducked into the shadows, breathless, the lion leaping to a higher ledge above them as a living shield. Adrian turned to her, his chest heaving. She was so close he could feel the warmth of her breath, see the fire in her eyes that refused to break. He wanted to tell her everything, how much he needed her, how much this journey had changed him, but words felt too small. "If we don't make it," he began. Her hands framed his face, steadying him. "We will, but even if we don't, I'm glad it's you." The noise of the riders regrouping filled the air, but for a heartbeat it was only the two of them. They held each other, not in fear but in defiance, a silent vow binding them tighter than any promise spoken aloud. The lion's roar broke the moment, drawing their eyes upward. Adrian tightened his grip on her hand. "Ready?" "Always," she said without hesitation. And then, with the lion charging ahead like a golden storm, they broke from the shelter of the rocks, running toward the rising sun, their hearts pounding in unison, their bond unshakable in the face of whatever waited beyond the dunes. Please click subscribe to our channel. We have more stories coming soon. Miss any new stories? Thank you for listening.